All right, here we have the Finale plugins with MIDI manipulation project 1. In this project, I'm going to give you a snippet of a piece by Bach. And the goal is to create an entire piece by using plugins and copy and paste without entering any notes. So you'll take this snippet of the piece I have called Bach Invention Working Version that's just 4 measures. And you'll copy and paste this to make a composition. So let's Command E or Control E is scroll view. We're going to set that up here. And here is the working version that you're going to copy and paste from. Some of the requirements for this project is you're looking to make a 3 to 4 minute song, and you must have at least 10 tracks. Sounds like a lot, but once you get going, start plugging them in, you add them in the score setup, the setup wizard, I think you'll find it's a lot quicker once you get going. So at least 1 bass, got double bass down here, 1 pitched percussion. So glockenspiel, vibraphone are examples. I've got 2 pitched percussion here because I just think they're cool. 1 woodwind. So I went with a couple woodwinds, piccolo and flute. 1 string instrument. I did violin and viola. And 1 brass. So those are just your minimum requirements. You have to have basically 1 instrument from each family, and you'll want to double up to make your total of 10 tracks. So I came up with soprano, piccolo, flute, violin, viola, trombone, glockenspiel, vibraphone, double bass. And you'll start copy and pasting this original Bach invention, snippets of it, over into your score, and building your piece from these little motives in the invention. Your final piece must include dynamics and articulation, so you're going to make a composition out of this. Don't go overboard, just a few, what I say, structurally placed, so get an idea and put some articulation on it, and you can copy that as you go. So just to refresh, copy, paste. Let's just start with, let's take this opening motive here. I'm gonna Command C or Control C if you're on PC. And I'm gonna go over with the selection tool, which is the arrow tool, and put that in the first measure and Command V. Voila, we have piccolo. And if we play, okay, we've got our first motive, yay. Some important manual transpositions, so ways you can move this around. Let's say if I copy and I paste this exactly into the trombone, looks pretty good. If I put it into the double bass, ooh, it's way too high. So some manual transpositions you can do are, if you select the entire measure with the selection tool, the arrow tool, and push 8, it'll take it an octave lower. If you push 9, it'll take it an octave higher. If I push 8 twice, it'll take it an octave lower and then an octave lower again. So you can indefinitely move this by octave using numbers 8 and 9. Likewise, let's say I wanted to have the glockenspiel start with this. Oh, we can see it's too low. I'm going to push 9, goes up. Let's have it all the way up there, 2 octaves higher than where I pasted it. If you use the numbers 6 and 7, 7 takes it up a step. 6 lowers it a step. So one thing that could be interesting, let's say if we wanted the glockenspiel to start this piece, maybe I'd do this in 2 measure sets. So I'm going to copy these 2 measures together and paste. Let's have measures 3 and 4 go up a step. Then let's copy those, paste, and we'll go up another step. I'm going to change back to score view. It's a little easier to see. Well, I don't know if it's easier to see. Let's listen now. Just this could be a way that I could begin the whole piece. So you can hear that the yellow notes here are ones out of the range. So let's take this whole gesture. I'm going to push number 8, take it down. And I kind of liked the way this bass groove sounded in the beginning. So let me copy just the double bass into measure 3. And I'm going to have it match the starting on D. So I'm going to push 7 to take it up a step there, both in the trombone and the bass. So let's hear that development. And there's a helicopter going by. That's not in the piece. Okay, so you start to see, whoa, I already got 6 measures of material, bam, just with this little manipulation and one idea of transposition. So about one other requirement is that you must use the plugin functions I have listed at least once in your composition. So I'm going to, this is starting on page 2 of the directions. So all these plugins are under, in the menu, the item called plugins. And you'll see the main ones we're going to use are note, beam, and rest, and scoring and arranging. So those are the 2 sections of plugins that we're going to use. This first one I have listed says canonic utilities. So we're going to go up to plugins and go to scoring and arranging, canonic utilities. And this is where you can manipulate the pitches with different kind of procedures. So inversion is when all the intervals get turned upside down from what they were. So you have to select, before you go in there, select which ones you want to invert. So if I want to invert the piccolo, I'm going to select, you can either select the whole measure or you can select just a portion of the measure too. Let's just select the whole measure now to see how it works. So scoring and arranging, canonic utilities, and we're going to say diatonic mirror. So diatonic means it'll keep it in the key signature. And we'll click apply and turn everything way low. So I'm gonna click done, and I'm gonna push number 9 to bring it back up an octave. So you can see, rather than the original gesture that goes up, da 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 da, everything goes down. Da 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 dee da dee da 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 da. It reverses anything that went up the first time in the original now goes down, and vice versa. So it would sound something like this. And you might want to give that its own place over here as a new way to start the phrase, for example, because it sounds a little funny on top of the original inversion. So I usually, when I start to invert stuff, start its own section. So that's one little composing hint. You can also do something called, let's just undo that for now so we can go back and try retrograde. So I'm going to retrograde this whole gesture in the beginning. Same place, plugins, scoring, arranging, canonic utilities, and retrograde. So retrograde plays everything you've selected in reverse order. So it's going to start with those 8th notes and then do the 16ths. Click apply. It's going to do this funny transposition thing, but I can push 9 to take it up the octave. You can see now, da 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 da. It plays the whole measure backwards, which is kind of a cool way that you can change up. This might actually sound very good overlaid with the other parts. Let's see. And that sounds kind of cool. So I might take that riff and maybe do it 3 times. And then what if I just did that? I'm going to take just that last little piece of the piccolo and repeat just that little 16th part. Why not? Also, there's no C on the piccolo. There's no no middle C, no C4. So I'm going to take this whole thing up an octave as well so that it's not out of the range. Let's hear how this is going. All right, so you get the idea of that. Another requirement of this is at least one track via the drum groove or Latin percussion plugin. So there's plugins that you can use that automatically generate tracks with stylistic accompaniments, basically. So to do this drum groove, select everything. So push Command A or Control A, it'll select your entire score. And we're going to go up to plugins, scoring and arranging, and you can use either drum groove or Latin percussion. You can check both these out. I'm going to show just Latin percussion. I like this one better because if I click on a groove, let's just click on cha-cha-cha, I can add instruments like we did in the beginning. Let's do timbales and congas. And then you be sure to click new stabs at bottom of the score. Otherwise, it'll overwrite your material that you've already written in your current score. So new stabs at the bottom of the score. Click OK. And you can see, voila, it's added a percussion groove. Let's check it out. And that conveniently did not play, but let's see why. Score Manager. This is a good tutorial for a potential sound problem you might have. You want to check in Windows Score Manager device. Make sure your garroted instruments are loaded. So I'm not sure why it didn't load up garroted there. But we're going to load them in, and you can see now it's grabbing my timbales and congas under the ethnic percussion sounds. Let's see how it sounds now. And this is where we can do, if you do Command Shift E on Mac or Control Shift E if you're on PCE, Command Shift E or Control Shift E on PC, it'll open up the studio view, and percussion's a little quiet. So I'm going to turn these all the way up. My trombone was a little loud. I'm going to turn that down. Let's try it now. All right, and once you put dynamics in your score too, it'll help the playback and balancing all the sounds. Command E takes us back to scroll, or if you push Command E again, it takes you back to the score view. Let's stay in score view, it's a little easier for the tutorial. So Note, Beam, and Rest Editing plugin. Another way you can manipulate some of these is by changing the rhythm. So let's work with another chunk. This 8th note chunk is a nice chunk for people that might be kind of just grooving along in your composition. Let's take this 8th note chunk, let's put it in the viola. And let's copy this a few times. I'm actually going to just repeat this 8th note groove a few times. And what you can do, let's say if it starts in eighth notes, 2 measures of that, and you want to subdivide the third measure. There's a plugin for subdividing. So plugins, Notebeam, Editing Rests, and it's called Rhythmic Subdivisions. And you can set the range of durations. So we're basically, this piece has just whole note through 16th. And I've selected eighth notes. And so I have to select something smaller than an eighth note to get it to subdivide. So I'm going to select 16th. That's the next smallest subdivision of the notes I've selected, and click OK. You can see, voila! Should have selected this measure too, because I want to do the same thing, scoring and arranging, or sorry, Notebeam editing, subdivisions. We're going to subdivide measure 5, 2. Or measure 4. I meant to say, let's take a listen. So that's one of the things that you can do there. You can also take any rhythm and turn it into a single pitch. So let's say after a certain point, I want the bass part, maybe the bass part can just groove on, this is in the key of C. So what if I had it groove on G, which is 5? It's the kind of tonicizes the 5 chord. So I'm going to paste those notes in, go up to scoring and arranging, and this one, or no, sorry, Notebeam Rest Editing. We're going to go to single pitch plugin, and you can choose what note you want it to play as a single pitch for the rhythm that you've selected. So let's do G3 for the double bass, and it's going to turn everything I selected into G's. And maybe that's a little high, so let's do 1 octave lower. I just pushed 8 to make it lower. And you can start to copy and paste. This is going to have this kind of groove out. Let's see how that sounds. And probably only 2 measures of that, because it has kind of a pedal effect. And then let's have, this is kind of an intuitive process. When you start copying stuff, it's going to look really ugly until you put it down in the right octave. Let's see how that sounds now. And goes on. And the final plugin I want you to use is Tremolo. So tremolo is basically a trill between notes that are wider than a second. So you're going to want to pick something that's wider than a second, because anything that's a second is just a trill. So let's pick this interval here, the D or B to E. You go up to plugins and scoring and arranging. Or sorry, I mean TG Tools. This is where we're going to use TG Tools. Easy Tremolo. Just keep it at 3 beams and just leave things that are checked here where they're set and click go, and you'll see it turned that whole beat into a tremolo, and it'll actually play back. I'm going to set this at leftmost measure so it won't go back to the beginning each time. It's something you can do in your playback controls. This little arrow here, leftmost measure, and click play. So some people like to, you can also copy many of these tremolos if you want that effect to go longer. Helpful hints. So I mentioned Command E or Control E on PC. Command E will take you to scrolling or score view. Command Shift E takes you to the studio. So you want to adjust the volume as you go so you can really hear how all these parts are interacting. Audio, banks and effects, if you need to check some of your routing for how stuff is plugged in. But Score Manager, Windows Score Manager, you'll be able to see your channels and see that your device is connected. This is probably the most important place for making sure everything is set up right. It's very easy to see it here. And you can also load in Garriton if it's not playing or if the incorrect sound is connected. All right, let me play you a little example, student example. One other thing that I ask you to do in this is to have one tempo change. So let me play you a little bit of this student's example. And let's see, can I go a little smaller so you can see it? Yep. I'll just play a little bit for you to give you an idea, and then I'll go to the tempo change. Okay, that's the first tempo change. Using the pedal. Okay, so then that kind of plays out over here. And then you can see the groove that this student created starts in the new section that speeds up again. So let's just listen to the end of this going into the new section that has the percussion groove. Okay, so that gives you some ideas of shape. You can have a slower section, a faster section, but you do need to change tempo once as one of the requirements for the assignment. All right, I look forward to seeing these and listening to these.